I've always felt different. I've always seen things, but when I tried to express them as a child, I was always told to ignore it.
There were people that I didn't know that came to me and said, I have this message that I keep getting that I have to deliver to you.
All of a sudden, out of the shadows, a homeless man just jumped right in front of me. And he said, I'm a soul just like you.
I love it. I wanted to understand the universe and who and what we are and what are we doing here.
We're all part of this amazing soul wave tapping into each other.
This was a major life changer.
You are a light. You have helped me a ton. Thank you.
You've given me the courage to live more from my soul.
Millions of people are awakening.
So wake up with Michele Meiché, the place to hear the best-selling authors and experts in the fields of cutting-edge self-help, personal growth, metaphysics, and spirituality. The soul path of awakening.
Understand what living awake is.
Soul Path travelers, welcome. Always great to connect with everyone. I love our Wednesdays together. If you happen to be new here, welcome. It's always great to connect with you. So if you're new, the first half, you can call in. We have we're doing readings and connecting with you with your questions. And if you, our guest comes on at 12:30, so you want to stick around for our guest, which will be Robert Atkinson, author of The Way of Unity, A Profound Roadmap for Humanity's Next Stage. So we'll be diving in with him starting at 12:30. So anyone else that likes to also call in to say hi, you can. Just click the link and we'll chat. So those of you that are new, we're here every Wednesday, 12 p.m. Pacific time. This is a new platform on us. We were many years through Blog Talk Radio. All podcast episodes are available live after this live stream, and then all the podcast platforms, YouTube, Apple, Google, Spotify, of course, and FM, radio as well. So whatever your favorite podcast platform, you can re-listen, you can download. I'd love if you would subscribe. If you've been listening, go ahead and subscribe here. And if you would also on Apple and Spotify. Let us know how you found us. And if you have any questions or guest suggestions or comments, you can always email me at awakeningspodcast@gmail.com, or you can also go to info@soulplayground.life if you have that as well. So gang, hello everyone getting in the chat. It's good to see you. You can, call in, click the link. Love to hear from you and hear how your life is unfolding. And again, if you have questions for our guest, he will be on at second half of the program around 12:30. Yeah, so, okay, that sounds good. All right, gang. Also, ways to connect with me: Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, but especially Substack, Instagram, and Patreon. If you want to know more about the soul, what you're meant to do here, what is the soul path, what is the soul awakening, what is this particular awakening? There are many awakenings. There's awakenings in the healthcare system. There's financial awakenings. You hear all different sectors, on the earth plane talking about it. Oh, I think it's a geopolitical awakening. It's awakening. So you're hearing this, environmentally. So all the sectors, all the systems on the earth, in the 3D world, in the mainstream world, are having some type of awakening. And to some degree, that could be causing a little bit of a fissure, a little bit of the old and the new, not aligning anymore, but that is the way that it is meant to be. And I've been wanting to touch on, because I've been getting a lot of questions, and I'm going to be diving more on Uranus and Gemini because it's a very powerful transit. Yes, Pluto in Aquarius is. Yes, Saturn and Neptune in Aries is as well, if we're looking through the lens of astrology. But there's so many ways to look at it, economically, environmentally, astrologically, numerology, from a numerological point of view. These are just lenses and languages to describe, discern what is going on, and perhaps map it out or help people cope and or thrive to optimize their life during these times. And that's one thing I like about this live stream and podcast is we had a wide girth of people on with a wide breadth of knowledge. And you can always see how everything synthesizes. And depending on what your focus, what you highlight in your life, what your proclivities are, where's your inclination in your life, where are you most drawn, where are your interests, that's what's going to determine the language, the lens that you're using, right? I like to blend it all. And that is a bit of Uranus and Gemini. So one of the ways to really start looking at this transit, it's changing the mental construct. A lot of you have heard me talk about this. There's a new mental construct, which means a new way of living and being, which means beliefs have to change. Our idea of what is possible or what is, important, values changing. So this is going to be a very intense cycle because, and some of you have probably already even experienced this at some point in your life, where something just keeps coming up and you can no longer avoid it or evade it, or the reality of something like I have to change, or what I believe is possible has to change. And so we're going to be challenged a lot by what we see in what we want to call that mainstream consciousness, the mainstream world. Now, before we point fingers, I always like to say this, that everything on this planet is needed and necessary. Nature is very efficacious, right? It's efficient. There's nothing in nature that doesn't have a purpose. Now, humans, we do that. We might have, I always joke, how many Birkin bags, you see some of these back in the day, the fashion influencers and their Kardashians are opening their closet and they have 30 or 40 Birkin bags at between 10 and 35,000 a pop. It's okay, guys. I like a good Birkin bag too, but do you need 20 or 50? Do you need 100? You know what I mean? Or can you use them all? Do you recycle them? So I think a lot of people are going to be asking that in your life. How much is too much? Is this, is this worth the payoff? It's a simplifying. And some may see it as an economical pinch, but I like to look at the metaphysical. I look at the spiritual. I look at the umbrella of it all. What does this really mean? What is this bringing out? And so if we look metaphysically, if we look through the lens of spiritualism and the occult, everything has a vibrational frequency. It starts in the undifferentiated aspect of the all that is. As Jung said, everyone comes in with a living question, which I say living question and living answer. We're the answer to our own question. We're living out this cosmological, existential question, right? It's very individual to us, but it also has a collective aspect to it. And so things morph, right? On a feeling level, sensing feeling level, right? Vibrationally, they coalesce into some kind of experience or expression. That's simply what manifestation is, right? It means to manifest, means to make visible in French, or Old French, manifest, to make visible, that's it. But unless something has enough resonance, coherence, and aggregate vibrational frequency, or frequencies really, it's not going to manifest. And that's why, a lot of times I'll get this question, well, Michele, why hasn't this happened sooner? Or why didn't these people wake up? Or why hasn't the news changed? Or why hasn't it? Because no matter how evolved you are, no matter how enlightened or awake or aware, and God knows there are people way more awake, aware than I am, think of the mystics, the sages over the years, until there's enough, again, aggregating, collective vibrational frequency and resonance coherence, something doesn't manifest. It doesn't stick and stay. It doesn't take hold. So I think if you look also that lens that I'm suggesting, on some level, we can be even more hopeful, because a lot of people say, oh, look, this happened similar, 100 years ago, 500, 1,000. Yes, we're replaying these cycles. But I dare say on some level there is more consciousness, more awareness also on the planet. And you can just look around. And I invite you to do that, is look for the signs of the awakening, of the unity consciousness, of people eating better. You know, I said this a couple live streams and podcasts ago, I don't know, 3-4 weeks ago. I don't look, yes, I can see what's dissolving and what's not working, and I can see war and I can see but that's been going on all the time, guys. We just see it more because of social media and the way things are structured. This stuff, it's been replaying and it's been happening. We just are seeing it more, even more so that we now have to understand that we all have our own sacred path. Though we can have sympathy or empathy and compassion, we also have our own path. And each soul, as one of my teachers said years ago, what makes you think you're so arrogant? And this is just in the general you, that your life is better or you're more aware. That soul picked, each soul came in with this particular life. That doesn't mean we don't try to help, obviously, or have compassion, but we also owe it to our own life, right? So getting back to what I was going to say. So I have people call in and say, okay, why is this not, happening sooner? But because of the aggregating, mitigating or non-mitigating circumstance, what makes something better or worse, we needed more people to awaken, whether it's through something, trauma or something they've experienced, or exhilaration, or they're just been, that's their coding, the time is now, right? So for everything to come through, there has to be more people awake, aware. And that's why I'm saying you can see what's dissolving, what's breaking apart, what seems scary. Look for the awakenings. Look for, more people are eating healthier. It doesn't matter if it's at a mini market. It doesn't matter if it's at a Walgreens or some Target. No shade to them. Maybe they're not eating, organic at the farmer's market or the boutique, health food market. But it's getting out there every way that it can. You go into the mini mart, you go whether the gas station, the 7-Eleven, what are some of the stop and pick, whatever they're called. What do you see? Energy drinks. Now you see supplements. They have fruit, where before they didn't have things like fruit. Now they have a little fruit section. So, but yes, layers and levels. Maybe one, vitamin or supplement is better, or one fruit is better, but at least it's there. When you start looking, then you see the thread. You don't see the thread as much when it's dissolving. Why? Because it's dissolving, so things look scary. It looks like chaos without order. Believe me, there's chaos, but out of this chaos is new order. It's a form of creation. And we can't have new order and putting things in place unless we take things out and examine and look at it. If you're cleaning out your closet, or you're cleaning out that junk drawer, or that, junk trunk, suitcase, you can move only so much stuff around, but then you have to begin to take it out or dismantle it. So that's a lot of what's going on. So one of the guiding principles is going to be, as we go through this, is what are you healing, fixing, or wrapping up? I'm talking about this for this month on Patreon. It's also Uranus and Gemini. It's that Gemini energy. Saturn, Neptune, and Aries, new vision. There's a global vision. And what are you bringing in? What are you focusing on? We're going to have to learn to do both. In the old paradigm, and the ego is very much about this. I have to end this. I can't tell you how many people I work with that don't want to bridge and build. They're like, I got to quit this job. I got to quit this. I got to let go of this and start something new. But yet they don't have the foundation yet. And I'm like, no, you got to bridge. You got to stay with what you're doing, or get a different bridging job, cover the basis, and then create. So you can see that individually, and you can see that in the collective systems, organizations, corporations. You can see that there's this bridging and building. Things are happening on the side, new systems, new structures. In transitional counseling, it's the reorganization process. We go into what's called the gray zone. You're not where you used to be. You can't go back, but you're not yet where you're going. My friends, My soul buddies. We are going to be masters at that. And less worrying about what we're letting go of. And it's being drawn by the bigger vision, no matter what it seems like, no matter. And that connects us into spirit. That's true, in my estimation, true spirituality, because that's the direct connection to God or God consciousness, the all that is, infinite creative intelligence, spirit, however you want to term it. That's the direct connection that happens in prayer, that happens in a miracle, that happens in hoping, screaming, and it's attunement and alignment. It doesn't matter if you're hoping and screaming for something, as long as you're following it through with an action that's in alignment, which really is an answered prayer or miracle. If you look at it, it's alignment. You aligned to that. You put yourself in that place to open to that possibility. So, my little promo for today's live stream, I don't sweat it. I got so inspired. Megan Trainor's song, and I kept hearing "Don't Sweat It," and I ended up working out to it on my Pilates machine this morning and doing a little bit of Pilates and a little bit of yoga and stuff. And I was like, that's it. It's like, we're in this no matter what, where there's no going back. There's no closing our eyes, it's really tight, going, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And so you have to find your rhythm. You have to find that Uranus and Gemini. You have to find your entry point through the lower mind or the beta consciousness. Now, for me, sometimes it's music or movement. Where do I get inspired that I get in my rhythm? Now, I've been going through a little, not huge, I'll talk about it more when I know exactly what it is. But I had like a little health challenge scare. That's why I haven't done readings. I think I'll do something for soul insights and tarot. But I've started feeling so much better and dancing, going around. And I went, God, if I didn't know I had this thing, I would be, my life was not interrupted. What gets me through is my practice, my connection with people, my spirituality, nature, friends, family, obviously, all those same things. But you're going to have to ask yourself, what gets you through also on your own, without the person, without the therapist, without the friend, without the spouse, without the boyfriend, girlfriend? Because even if you are coupled, even if you are in a relationship or you have kids, there's times you feel alone. There's times that you're like, I don't know if I can do this, or this person doesn't understand me, because they're not in your head. They're not you. So no matter how connected you are, no matter how aligned you are, no matter how in love you are with someone or how much they get you, there's times they just don't get you. And usually they're in the most pivotal, poignant times. You have to rely on something more within you, whether faith, whether your spiritual connection, your inner knowing, higher self, however you term it. It's that something more beyond the ego awareness. And that is definitely also this wonderful transit of Saturn, Neptune, and Aries. That Neptune is spirit, is spirituality. It's illusion and delusion also. But as I think Einstein said, if it's all an illusion, you might as well pick an empowering one, right? So we've got choice here, and that's what the Uranus and Gemini is teaching us. What are you choosing? What's in front of you? What is the higher? What is the best? What is the most optimizing? Or what do you need to learn? Where are you really at? And so in that choice, when you really align to choice, it becomes very empowering, because then you're in that creative or co-creative process. You're working with the energetic cycle, right? Which is tarot, numerology. That's the occult. What's hidden? Occult simply means hidden. The esoteric. What's the cheat sheet behind it all? We're going to have to rely more of that and have our own protocol. What stops you from going down the drain? What stops you from catastrophic thinking? Or how do you process all of that? Because as a therapist, I do believe in process, that part of me. I'm not just, the metaphysical. That's all good, and energy work and healing. But, on the human level, we still have the cognitive, psychological. So we don't want to get stuck in that. But you're going to find your way, your kind of way of navigating of seeing the messages. And that's why one of the ways I suggest to start integrating is to start looking for the signs of things coming together, for the connections, the ahas, the insights. Because the other stuff is obvious. Oh my God, the war, this, that. Oh, they're repeating the 1,000-year cycle. Oh, this happened back in 1850. Oh, this is 1758. Oh, this was Third War. This is Second War. This is da da da. Yes, we all know that. And we can all, have suppositions, theoretical this and that. Yes, all of that is true, but that's not where the agent of change is. And Gemini is very much about change and positivity. That's why sometimes Gemini, along with Aries, gets a little bit of a bad rap, because it can be very surface. It's like, be serious, this is serious. But we don't find our creative solutions. The problem solving doesn't come in the deliberation. That's part of it, but then you have to let go of that. And that's when you get that aha, that, oh my God, or somebody comes in your life and everything just lines up. Or this is very important, you guys, because a lot of you know of all that prophecies that I received, those visions and predictions in, 30 plus years now, but especially the ones in 2017 where I was shown, and the guides showed me the pandemic. They said it came from the government, everything that ended up happening. However, some of the stuff has not manifested as extreme. So why is that? Because of you. Because of me. Because of people. You have to remember what you're doing and focusing on can make things less intense or extreme. Because again, it's like I ask everyone, how many typewriters are people using? It's not because people protested and marched and said don't use typewriters. It's because people shifted away from it. So as all of us individually are shifting more into deeper understanding, compassion, unity, making sense of this, saying, okay, I'm going to create this. I'm going to live more purpose-filled. I'm going to scale down, and I know I'm here for a reason. I'm going to do this less. I'm not going to, fight. Whatever it is for you, what's the optimal experience for you and decisions. That's affecting the collective. And I'm not the only one that says this. We've had Lynn McTaggart on. She said that, right? She's intention experience. We have had Dr. Hawkins on. We've had Dr. Larry Dossi on, said this. Dr. Maynard. They all have said this, and they spend the time because it's their jam. They do the science around it. They do the experiments. We know the prayer, non-specific prayer, meditation. So you're going to have to, and that's Uranus and Gemini, new way of thinking, Saturn, and Neptune and Aries, new way of thinking and being, new vision. You're going to have to go online, look at these studies, so that when you get in the spiral of doubt, you go, oh, wait a minute, I am making a decision, making a difference because I think I am, but also there is a scientific research backing this up. So I keep saying the revolution is here, but it's a silent one. It's one in consciousness and awareness. It's one with intentionality. It's one where we wink at each other, wink, wink. We reach out our hand and lift each other up. It's not bells and whistles. That's not where the real change is happening. And that is going to be a huge shift in our belief system and even beyond belief system, our whole mental construct, the mental realm of how we do things, how we create change. Imagine when more people realize that. I guess back in the 60s, sit-ins, they tried to do it. But, I hate to say it, drugs, alcohol kind of muck these things up. But I see it happening. I see it with my clients that are in these fields that are making the changes in the world, governmentally, environmentally, systems of education. And they'll say, oh yeah, that city, the 3G city was going in, or 5G rather, that was, oh no, it's on hold for some reason. Oh, that law didn't come in. Oh, that didn't come in. I mean, obviously some stuff is sneaking in, but it just shows that we are making a difference. So start looking for that and bring that into your mindset, I would say. that you're going to look for that. And then simultaneously, what are you healing and fixing? What are you letting go of? What are you making peace with? And at the same time, what is also coming in? Where are you being drawn? Where are you now being pulled and inspired? Well, I'm inspired because I see our guests. Hello, Shahid. Hello, everyone. You have questions? Please let me know in the chat. You can call in also at some point if you have a question or comment. But I'm going to just be breaking down chunks of this so that you get little bites to integrate in the way that is, individual and empowering for you, so that you work with this polarity, because that's what Gemini is about. Gemini teaches us about polarity, but there is at some level that the polarity, right, the duality is one. It comes from one, with that metaphysical axiom, right? From the one comes, out of the one comes the many, and from the many is the one. It's also the law of correspondence, as above, as below, right? As within, as without. So there's an idea of this corresponding nature of life that, like you say, it's energy, but we have hot and cold. Yeah, so that's duality. There's a polarity. So Uranus and Gemini is going to, that energy or that lens, it's not that, and that's the thing, it's the all that is, or God consciousness through that lens. It's not the planet that's doing, that's that whole idea of that unity. It's coming from this infinite source, this one source, but into the many. It manifests as many life, is all of life. It's all of life. But the Uranus and Gemini is going to teach how not to get stuck in the extremes of polarity, that there is a balancing point in the center of polarity. And of course, that's what the teachings of Buddhism, that's a big factor in the philosophy of Buddhism, the middle way. And that's the Shaolin masters, the, Tai Chi, Qigong, the martial artists, they recognize that it's all energy. That's why in martial arts, they say, well, you use your opponent's energy kind of against them. You get into their little vortex of energy and you do your little, kata, your little movement, kata, I guess it is. You do your little movement, but you're using their energy. Like if they're trying to bowl you over, maybe you just move to the side. So I feel like those people that are very metaphysically inclined, energetically inclined, that you're working with the metaphysics, or just the basic principles of, the energetics. Like you can feel it, like feeling the energy in a room, or you're like a whirling dervish, you're whirling around and you can feel the whirlwind of the energy. And then a friend of yours or somebody comes next to you and starts whirling, and you create this energy. Just in the simplest level, you understand that you're tapping into the one energy. Artists know this. They're tapping into something more than themselves, into some, I don't know, the sky, consciousness, God, people call it different things, but they're aware that there's this attunement, there's alignment, there's this tapping in, and I got the answer. I got the idea for this. I don't know how, it just came to me. That higher mind, right? Divine mind, or higher consciousness, expanded consciousness, collective, however you want to term it, to do well and thrive, you're going to kind of have to get into the game sphere of that and become a master of that and use that. And of course, that's where intuition comes from as well. So one thing you can do also in your life is if you're feeling too for or against something, how can you find that middle way? Where are your resistance ridges to what's something that's going on, or something that someone's saying? And it's simply in the most simple way is just seeing another person's point of view, even if you don't like it or agree with it or you hate it. There's a great process where people, sitting or standing, one person says something, you just hate it, and then they make you sit in their seat, you change seats. And before you say what you think, or, give your opinion, you kind of feel that person. Well, what were they thinking? Like understand, to stand under. that gives you an understanding. I don't like it, I don't agree with it, but I know I can see how you would do that or think that. That moves you out of the extremes of polarity. All right, gang. We have got with us today, I had mentioned at the top of the podcast, Robert Atkinson, developmental psychologist and author. And he is the author of The Way of Unity, a profound roadmap for humanity's next stage. Oh, and boy, do we need to hear about that. I think that is something we all, what is the next stage for humanity? Welcome, Robert. Good to connect with you.
Thank you, Michelle. Great to be with you.
Yes, beautiful. So let's, I saw that you were on a bit and this whole idea of this new vision that's coming in. And of course, I agree with you. We need a roadmap. We need lots of roadmaps, but for different people. But we do need a roadmap for this part because I feel we're being nudged or pulled in some way kind of far from where we've been or where we thought we would be or even how to live. So the roadmap is so important, even if it's just to give people ideas. So I'd love for you to talk a bit about this roadmap. What do you envision this roadmap? And maybe even how to use it. What is it to you?
That's a great place to start, and it's a little difficult to start out by saying that here's the roadmap that we need to go down because the condition that the world is in today, we all know, is not, as you said, is not where we want to be, and we know that we don't want to continue to go down the road that we seem to be going down right now. But for anyone to come up with a new roadmap that points a direction that is so clear and spelled out so perfectly, that's a little bit presumptuous, I think, on anyone's part.
Well, and I ask the question
so I'm
because
not,
people are looking for that. So that's
right.
what I want to
No,
know. They're looking for the
it's an
system, the
excellent question.
algorithm, right? Yeah. So I'm glad you're saying this.
Yeah, we live in the age of algorithms for sure, and everybody is looking for that. And I just wanted to mention that as a preface to what I do want to say about the book, in that it's a possible roadmap. It's not really a blueprint that like an architect would create for a building. It's not that specific, because what we're really talking about and what the book really describes, I hope that becomes evident to people who read the book. The book is not about presenting a blueprint to be followed exactly. It's rather about presenting an overall conceptualization of creation and where we fit into it, and therefore, based on that, what our guiding principles may be that lead us down a different road. And so that's really how the book, The Way of Unity, does it. It offers a new vision that includes strategies for bringing the human family back together as one. And this is a process that involves a whole dynamic range of things that ultimately are designed to bring about and maintain unity on all levels, personal, interpersonal, and global. So that's the approach, and what the book is offering is a series of strategies that's built around a process of collaborative learning on all levels together, and that's to me, I wrote the book because I think we really need a holistic perspective for the 21st century and beyond that recognizes that, first and most important, that the entire creation is one undivided whole, and that because of that, it's really the flow of evolution itself that's leading us back toward the realization of the long promised vision of peace on earth. And so when we talk about a roadmap and things like that, whatever else other words we might want to bring in for that, it's about finding the eternal and universal guidelines, guideposts, and principles from all the world's sacred traditions that have brought us to where we are today, and that are there to guide us through and beyond the current meta crisis that we're in today. But to achieve that ultimate goal, and this is what the book really provides on a step-by-step level, is that we need to live by principles that are designed to bring about this unity on a global scale, which would reflect the inherent unitive nature of the universe. So that's what I'm really thinking of in terms of a roadmap, is that what the world needs most right now is a strategy to bring about a divided humanity together, and a way to realize collective harmony that will lead to planetary flourishing. So that's the kind of vision that the Way of Unity offers, specifically also of how what I would think of as a universal spirituality, how social action and how community building all converge now to form a framework for peace building. And without all those components, peace building as we know it and have tried it for centuries won't get that far, really, because the only way humanity's next stage of its collective evolution will be fulfilled will be by starting locally with a strategy that is globally scalable. So that's how the Way of Unity offers a vision for inner peace, interpersonal peace, and world peace, because they're also interconnected, that we can't separate one from the other. And so that's the first thing I'd like everyone to know about the Way of Unity, is that it offers a unitive worldview that provides hope, optimism, and encouragement for divided humanity.
So again, it goes back to the individual, and so if I'm hearing you correctly, it's like you're bringing it local to global, so bringing it back from the global to the local, and also to the individual as well.
Yeah,
it sounds like what the individual can do. So I like it. It's okay. So this is your strategy or a construct, because I love that. It's like, it looks like a container or an umbrella of what are the ingredients. So do you think that we're getting, or that it is a time now of, to use an analogy of cooking, like to get the ingredients together, like you said, collaborative. To me, that perhaps makes me think of or alludes to maybe different people with different skill sets coming together. Is that what you're meaning with creative solutions? Yeah, go ahead.
It's definitely all of that, and coming together, the entire human family, all 8 billion of us, coming together in ways that we haven't before, and creating something that hasn't been created before, in the context of the whole that we're actually reflecting. You mentioned earlier in your opening about the law of correspondence, as above, so below. This is exactly where we're at now. And in terms of timing, I feel, and I think many people are feeling this now too, is that we're really about at the 11th hour in terms of our, evolutionary trajectory, and what's going on now, and what needs to happen as soon as it can. And at the same time, it's a long-term process that I'm talking about. So we also have to have, at the same time, we have to have a vision of what the outcome will look like when we get there. And so and this is what the real brief, succinct outcome that I present in the book is that the book asks us to, and invites us to imagine a world where every person feels seen, valued, and connected, a world guided by compassion, cooperation, and partnerships. And I know that may sound like a vision of a long promised future, and it is, but to get there, we must walk a very practical path every day of our lives. And this book helps us discover something greater than ourselves, particularly a growing, expanding, organic renewal process that is aligned with evolutionary forces. So that's the other part of what you were getting at, I think, is that we are in the midst, and have forever been in the midst of an ongoing evolutionary flow. And the book, the heart of the book is about building strong, vibrant, inclusive communities right where we are, because they're the outcome. They will be the factors that come together to create an unbroken chain that will bring about the outcome of world peace. So in laying out that kind of a path to world peace, it really clarifies some of the preconditions and what they are to get there. And it spotlights a process of collaborative learning that is being carried out right now on all social levels to achieve this long sought after promise of world peace. And I've got an interesting metaphor for us to think about. I mean, I mentioned quickly earlier the metaphor of the human family as one. I think that's a concept and a metaphor that's becoming more. Many more people are becoming aware of that, but there's an underlying reason for having that as our. You also mentioned an umbrella perspective. Well, for me, the umbrella perspective to all of this is humanity as one human family, but there's an underlying reason for that too, which is an interesting metaphor on its own. So, and that is thinking of humanity as a mycelial network. I don't know if anybody has thought of that before, but we're in the process of realizing that we are our own mycelial network. And let me give that a little context. We've been living by the old story of separate families, separate communities, separate nations, separate religions for far too long. We really can't afford, based on the timeline that we're on and in the place we're at right now, we can no longer think that we are different, distinct, and disconnected. A new story is emerging of humanity as organically connected and interdependent, even much more so than we're aware of. And that's where the workings of nature come in that you also referred to earlier. There's, as we may know, there is an underground network of roots that consist of very diverse life forms that nurture and connect all the trees in the forest. This is a mycelial network designed to facilitate and maintain an organic renewal process by focusing on the needs of the whole. That mycelial process network doesn't get distracted by what's breaking down. It knows that it is part of the process too. It rather focuses on building up what is emerging. And most important, this organic renewal spreads through the strength of its own unity and diversity. Mycelial networks weave their wholeness with a patterned persistence and are assured of their outcome, always nurturing networks of care, cooperation, and sharing by safeguarding the common good. So the interesting thing here with this metaphor is that is again the principle of correspondence, as above, so below. Humanity, too, was created to do the same thing, to carry out an organic renewal process of society at all levels, local to global. And I'd like to invite us to begin to think of all humanity as its own mycelial network. We have yet to acknowledge this potential. It's a huge potential that we carry within us as a species. And we're still in the very early stages of discovering that we are our own mycelial network, even though we've been weaving and reweaving our own wholeness and unity on greater and greater scales for millennia. And this is what tells us that if we understand and live by the laws of nature, the organic renewal of humanity will spread through the strength of its own unity and diversity. This is what enables mycelial networks to weave their wholeness, to move at their own pace, and to be assured of the outcome, always building towards their own innate potential of a promised future. As we focus on building out our networks of care, cooperation, and sharing by safeguarding the common good, we'll recognize this unity and diversity amongst ourselves, which requires diversity in unity, not uniformity. So again, all 8 billion of us on this planet are part of this dynamic mycelial network. Our equivalent of mycelial networks in the social world is renewing and recreating the entire infrastructure of social relationships upon a new foundation of universal harmony and unity. This process of growth and transformation involves the full participation of the entire human family in building vibrant, resilient, inclusive, deeply connected, and harmonious communities right where we are. So what I'm suggesting is that our collective evolution, humanity's collective evolution, mirrors the cycles of nature, with each age building upon the previous. A series of organic renewal processes following the natural growth and development of all life forms is what will bring about the wholeness and unity of the human family. This is a process that resembles the natural growth and development of living organisms. And this is an organic strategy that could create the world anew.
Mm. So I love that analogy and metaphor, because it goes back to the collaboration, but also nature, which I agree. I think it's the more that we look at nature as we are a part of nature, nature doesn't focus on what's gone or left or leaving or dissolved. It focuses on the growth, the building. How do I, I'm just thinking of that, speaking of another metaphor, like that sprout, that plant sprouting through concrete. It may have moved through different pieces of concrete, but it finds the one crack to come through for life. So to me, what you're saying also fits into that whole idea that if you look at the lens of astrology, that Uranus and Gemini, that is the mental construct. So it is a mind shift of where are we putting our attention, where are we focusing, and next step, how to come together in the building. I also find it interesting, you're calling this collaborative learning, where there's a whole movement on this collaborative economy that almost, even if you can do something yourself, but maybe you do it you work with someone that is, at your level or maybe even better, or how do we come together and work together in whether as a team or in systems. I have a wonderful friend and client that works in the medical field, and they do this collaborative, economy, this collaborative working together with doula, midwife, doctor, obstetrician, and of course the mother and father or whatever. But they look at it, each person's bringing value and coming together and creating a system. So I bring this up because I wonder, and I like that you brought us back to, that's not going to be an algorithm or do 1, 2, 3 and you've got it. It's this umbrella, it's this construct. It's going to be a new way of thinking and coming together. what are the beginning pieces to that, though? What can help us start now? Obviously, reading your book, because it sounds like you outline the principles. But I think after a while, people are going to say, "Oh my God, there is not a 1, 2, 3, ABC to this, 10 steps, and here you are." It sounds like it's changing our thought process, perhaps.
Yeah, definitely. I think it is too. I agree with you totally there. And I like the way you put it just a minute ago, that each person brings value. That's the whole idea of this mycelial network approach and a collaborative learning process. It needs to be that in order for humanity to achieve its potential of unity and diversity. It can't, that goal of unity and diversity can't happen without each person being valued. And so what we're really describing is a process in which the common good is our organizing principle. And in that way, with that approach, we could collectively prioritize capacity building, empowerment, and the flourishing of all communities and individuals within them to ensure the equitable and harmonious functioning of all levels of civilization. That's the only thing that will bring about, first, the goal of achieving the unity and diversity, and achieving the and experiencing what the common good would look like in practice. So, and that's kind of the way the book is organized as well. It's I'll just mention these three key takeaways quickly from the book, because they're very straightforward and practical, which we have to, when we do talk about anything like a roadmap or a process or a strategy, it really does have to be both straightforward and practical. And so the book begins by the first third of the book actually is about how the natural order of the universe itself is wholeness, unity, and peace. But we've come a long way since the creation of the universe, and a lot of we all know, the rough history of the world. So we've gotten pretty far from that original state of wholeness and unity and peace when the creation came into being. That means now that, and the book follows that first part with the central part being a discussion, first identifying and discussing the what I refer to as unitive principles that reflect and sustain this wholeness and peace. So once we have, and that's a critical part of the collaborative learning process, is identifying and agreeing to carry out in our everyday lives the practice of a set of unitive principles in order to achieve or reclaim the inherent wholeness and unity and peace of the universe. Then the third part of the book goes into a bit of detail about the thousands of communities worldwide that are already applying those principles to restore the world to wholeness and build a culture of unity right where they are. So I could say a little bit more about each of those, or I could go on with questions, but that's the three components of the concept and the collaborative learning process, is putting those three components next to each other and recognizing how they're interdependent, totally dependent upon each other for achieving the common good on a universal scale.
It almost sounds like also a mental, emotional, homeostasis.
It
Getting into
is.
that right, the natural optimistic or optimal functioning.
Right. It definitely is about bringing about that state of homeostasis or balance, which is unity and wholeness. So we're, I mean, and that's the that goes back to, I mean, homeostasis is built into the mycelial networks underground that are connecting all the trees in the forest. That underground mycelial network exists for the same purpose of bringing about homeostasis for the trees in the forest, and that's what we have to learn as a human family, is to be able to do the same thing.
Yeah. So you're saying also that we have that, and we know that energetically, we know that subconsciously, we study the subconscious mind. I'm also a hypnotherapist, so I look at that as, we all, we talk about it. I think what I'm hearing we got to put the structures in place, the strategies that we actually use this, in our everyday living consistently, and in whatever, for problem solving, creative solutions, or for these structures that we all know. We're walking down the street, we feel someone, and we look, and they can be 30 feet from us, and our eyes glance because they were looking at us. We know there's this interconnectedness. And I am very hopeful. I feel like we are going to get to that understanding and the application of that, integrating, assimilating that into our life. I do definitely feel that. But I do also, at the same time, we need these conversations. We need the structure, the principles, the strategies for people to say, well, where do I start? Or how do I do that? Or how do I make that, because you even said earlier, practical. How do I bring that into my practical living? I think people need to see
Right.
the practicality, the practical application.
Exactly. Yeah. And
right.
Yeah, that's it. Totally. And the way we do that is by being in relationship and in communion with those around us. So it's not about thinking, how am I going to do this by myself? It's about how am I going to be part of this in relationship with others. And so that's why I mentioned that it's about building strong, vibrant communities. And so the strong, vibrant communities that I'm envisioning here and that are talked about in the book are a reflection of the communities of stars that are above us in the sky. We could see how all evolution includes and really is sustained by seemingly opposing forces that are interacting with each other to facilitate a process of transformation that is needed to expand circles of harmony. And that's what we're going through right now. Again, that kind of process of fulfilling and facilitating a process of both at the same time individual and collective transformation. So that's what a holistic view of the universe allows us to see, that unity and peace are the natural state of creation. But then when we bring that down to a principle level, we can see, I mean, it helps also to look at this when we are talking about this on a principle level. It helps to look at that evolutionarily and historically, because just as an example, if we think about the world as it was in the mid-19th century, there were, since the mid-19th century, there have been many human rights advances that have occurred since then, from the end of slavery to women's rights to the ongoing civil rights movement and beyond. And all of these have spawned a growing awareness of the need for principles that bring about unity to heal the ills of a divided humanity. So that's what the middle part of the book goes into detail on. It has a long discussion on unitive justice, or justice that brings about unity by maintaining community solidarity on all levels and by eliminating all forms of prejudice. Another principle is unitive economics, or economics that brings about unity by eliminating the extremes of poverty and wealth, making prosperity for all attainable. Another would be unitive narratives, or narratives that are grounded in unitive consciousness that bring about unity by validating and supporting the unity and diversity of humanity in all life. We could go on, and the book goes on to quite a few more principles like that, including education that brings about unity, and relationships that maintain the inherent harmony and balance between all things, until we get to finally the largest, most inclusive, kind of maybe last in line of these principles being implemented would be that of unitive global governance, or a global governance system that connects all strata of society by the same set of organizing principles. Those are a few that the book goes into a lot more detail on, and then there are, the third part of the book goes into quite a bit of detail about the communities around the world that have adopted these kinds of principles that bring about unity, and how they're applying them in their everyday lives as communities to achieve what is needed and appropriate for the common good. So all of that's happening.
Yeah. Now, where?
And
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, where you mentioned communities, because what I'm feeling like is that I think, just whether it's through books or conversations, of social media, different forms of media, that just hearing these concepts and talking about them starts changing people's ideas, of what's possible, or different avenues. So it's also, I think, exposure is really important. Along
Yeah,
that
thanks.
note, right? I think so.
Yeah, definitely exposure. We need to, I mean, that's really about expanding our consciousness to take in an all-encompassing vision that the book describes too. So yeah, you're definitely on the right track there. It's all about expanding our own individual consciousness, expanding the circles of unity that we might already be in, and creating even stronger circles of unity that we may be in as well. So yeah.
Now, Robert, you mentioned that there's other groups or societies that are doing this quite, it sounds like, successfully. Could you share a bit on that? What that looks like, and where this is?
Yeah, and I think there are many examples of communities that are in various ways applying principles to bring about unity, and to bring and to build cultures of peace. The one that I use is one that I happen to be pretty familiar with over the last 50 years of my life, and I was just thinking that, and this goes back to the middle of the 19th century as well, when the Persian prophet Baha'u'llah, who was the founder of the Baha'i world community, over the last 175 years, that community has grown to become a worldwide community, and has carried out a systematic social action initiatives by applying a model of unity and action to bring about harmony, balance, and unity, which are really the preconditions for peace. They've applied the principles to bring to bring about unity in their own communities, and so this is the infrastructure of local communities that I'm talking about that are linked. Just a second.
Go ahead. So it sounds like talking local communities. Again, that's the infrastructure of this concept, right?
So they're all linked by a common set of principles, and it's and they're all also undertaking the collaborative learning process that I referred to earlier too, and that's what grows and expands in the manner of a dynamic or organic renewal process. There's no set answers to any particular community issue or problem, but it is a process that's worked out through collaboratively learning together how a common set of principles that are designed to bring about unity can be applied through one of the components of this collaborative learning process is a practice called consultation. That's a word that's fairly common, but there is also a specific practice of consultation that's followed in these communities. And so the collaborative learning process that I am referring to in these particular communities, they are designed to carry out unified action toward a common goal, and they follow the collaborative learning process follows the stages of study together, whatever the current issue or concern of a local community or group might be. They study the in most cases the sacred writings that's considered sacred writings of any tradition are considered the pretty much the highest source to achieve unity in any setting. So it's the first step is studying, discussing, and consulting on those, and then after the process of consultation comes to its closure, then that determines the action that the community takes, and then following that action, then that is followed up by further reflection on the action that was taken to refine the process and learn from what they have been doing to do it even better the next time around. So that's in a very rough outline sense of what the collaborative learning process consists of.
Now, would this be, because I was going to ask you to, expound on the collaborative learning a bit. Is this just in communities? I guess it could be families. It could be any group. It
Yeah,
sounds like
any group, right?
Okay.
Yep.
And what you're saying is like it sounds like you also in the collaborative learning you get additional info in maybe through research.
Right.
Depending on
there's
a process to it. Okay.
Right. That's really the first step, is gaining as wide a understanding and knowledge of the issue itself, whatever that happens to be, in the community or the group. Starting out with that, and then at the same time, when that's underway, it may also be a matter of identifying the spiritual principle that directly relates to the problem or issue that's being consulted on. And if the group or community can identify a spiritual principle that's directly related to the issue, being consulted on, then that's when a plan of social action is discussed and ultimately acted upon after a clear consensus emerges organically from the consultation, and then the plans are devised for being carried out, and the process kind of repeats itself until a solution is reached within that group or community. So, yeah, I think it's a process and a practice, or consultation is a practice that can be utilized on every level, from family to any groups that we might be part of, to communities. But the real challenge that we have collectively is recognizing that this same process of consultation can be applied on a global level. That's a challenge that humanity faces right now, is to recognize how the process of consultation can be carried out on the largest scale.
Well, you'd have to get the system, the organization or the governmental system, to agree to the process, I
Right.
think, right? That would be,
Right.
you need a little infiltrator in there. But I think we're going in that direction. I really do, at least by what I've been shown. But again, it takes someone speaking up or saying, let's try this, or let's organize this. And I think, this is also would be great also in educational systems as well.
Yeah, right. Definitely, the educational systems come into play big time here.
Mm-hmm.
They have a really crucial role to play in this long-term ongoing process. So definitely, the educational systems are part of the larger transformation in process going on right now.
Yeah, and if they started implementing this, it has a better chance of getting, in more governmentally. Now, Robert, what about outside, like parallel systems, even let's say a community system that's working within this process that you're, espousing, and how let's say let's start with the collaborative learning, and also as a way of, let's say, handling issues. What about that community having a figurehead that then takes findings or takes something to a governmental source, whether local, federal, global, and starting to institute these types of ideas?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it comes back to, at least in part, to what you were saying earlier about that it really needs to be a matter of conscious will. We individually and collectively have to have the will to bring this into being, bring this approach into being. And so there's, I like to think of a three-part process here that in which will is the centerpiece again, and that three-part process is one that I think of as knowledge, volition, and action. So the knowledge part is about, and we touched on this earlier too, I think that the knowledge part is about expanding the kind of awareness that we're talking about, and having a unitive consciousness become the norm. We're quite a ways from that, especially when we look at what's going on right in the world right now. But we are evolving toward that time when a unitive consciousness will be the norm, when all people choose to contribute to the inherent and intended unity of all things, and that there will be a time when that'll become our desired mode of being, and that will define our quality of life and connect us all on a deeper level with all things. And that'll become our priority. So that's the first knowledge part. We're moving toward that, however, slowly, toward a time when we will all have the knowledge of what we're talking about. And then the second part is the volition or the will to choose to put into action what we already know is what we want to bring into being, and that then that volition or the will, and I'm really referring to at that point in our evolution. When we get to that point, it'll need to be a collective will, not just an individual will, but a collective will, in order to then develop the plan of action and everything else needed to put that and put the knowledge and the will into action. And when that happens, and that'll complete the three-part process. So that's the broader or the bigger picture of the way I like to think of the process. We first have to have knowledge of what we want. Then we have to have the will to do it, and then we have to take action on that knowledge that we have of a goal that we want to work towards. And I think there were times where we were close to that. One example of that might be the end of World War II, when the United Nations came into being. That was an early sign of the world being ready after a long, totally destructive world war. The world seemed ready to think about collective will and bringing together the nations of the world to act in ways that would continue to bring about a peaceful world. But then, since the end of World War II, we know of a lot of other things that happened since then too, especially what's going on now. So all of that, when we look at history in that way, all of that tells us that we're also dealing with what I think of, that I mentioned briefly before too, is we're dealing with cycles of nature and cycles of evolution, where evolution is not linear. It's not a straight path. It's not this happens, then the next thing that we want to happen happens, and that it's not a straight path. It's more of a cyclical, spiraling process that includes moments and even longer moments of the clash of opposites. But that clash of opposites is necessary as well for getting through a process of transformation. And that's where we are right now. A lot of people have compared the time that we're in now to the mystic dark night of the soul. And on a collective level, we're in the dark night of the collective soul right now. But that is only one phase of a process that's always in motion, always moving. And so when we think of evolution in that context of it being cyclical and spiraling towards the ever greater goal, we need to remember and acknowledge that it's going to include times of opposition. But we will get through those times of opposition. Those seeming opposites. The thing is, all of those opposites that are clashing in the world now, they're all part of the same whole. And we don't seem to remember or recognize that everything that's happening is part of the same whole. But what is happening is part of the process of transformation. And that clashing of the opposites will bring about the completion of the process of transformation, so that we'll get to a time at the next level of our evolution when we all recognize that okay, maybe the goal of the United Nations didn't work out when it did, and we had to go through another spiral. But now we're at a time and a place in our collective evolution beyond that, where we know for a certainty that this is what we want to happen, and at that point, the collective will to take the action needed for the common good will happen.
So I agree. So that is, the opposition is part, esoterically we call it harmony through conflict. So,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
so you're saying that that's part of it. Let me ask you, what you said we were almost there, and I agree. It seems like times in history where we've come together with this kind of a unifying principle that now we're going to all work together. And what causes that to either start lessening, dissolving, or falling away? Yeah, it seems to get so far and then it reverts.
Yeah. No, that's a great question, and that's important to bring in here, I think, because one of the things that causes the clash of opposites that I was referring to is the other characteristic or quality that we were given as human beings, and that is the quality of free will. We're in a creation. I mean, we can go into a lot of detail about this, but a really short version of that is we came from a spiritual realm where everything was in harmony and unified and balanced. But then we spent 9 months in the womb and came into this physical world that we're all living in now with the potential, the embedded inner potential, innate potential to become a reflection of that spiritual nature of the entire creation that we were designed for, while at the same time being given a free will. That seems, I don't know, maybe it seems contradictory or counterintuitive, but the point of that, and a way to understand that, is that it's only through free will that we learn what we need to learn to continue our journey as spiritual beings from here on. So our purpose here in this physical world is not only to deal with all of the temporal, physical, and opposing forces that we come in contact with all the time, but to learn from those what our true nature is. And when we learn that our true nature is spiritual and whole, and that we are beings to assist and cooperate and collaborate with all others, then we begin to live according to that part of our nature, and our free will, so to speak, kind of becomes less important to us, and we because we recognize our individual and collective responsibility, which is really a higher responsibility to know that we are part of the common good, and that it is our responsibility to participate in and contribute to bringing about the betterment of the world. So we're in a time now where things really do feel out of balance because there are so many, and when we misuse our free will, that's also called ego. Is another word for free will getting out of hand. When we recognize that what we're really here for, where we came from, and what we're really here for, that we are at our core, at our essence, we are not just spiritual beings, but we're a soul that's meant to continue on forever, then we realize that our responsibility becomes preparing ourselves and others for that. So I think we're in a collective part of the journey where free will is still out there kind of on its own, but eventually that will become less of an issue. So the short answer to your question is, once we resolve our own issues with free will, we'll be at that place where we all want to be, and we'll be able to contribute to the greater good in a more efficient way.
Wow. What a very astute, insightful, and enlightening answer. I think you brought so much into that. So in the context of what you just said, and kind of combining what you said earlier about things happen in cycles, and I agree with you, as we have less and less ego functioning and more on a soul level, that guided, higher self, the unity guidance for what's best for all concerned. Do you think and feel, since we go through these cycles, that we're almost at like an extreme level, and then we'll be course correcting, or the potentials of that course correct or reset to go back more into that unification, get into that unity consciousness from where we came from? Do you think that's part of the path or trajectory right now, is to some degree getting back in alignment to that?
Yeah, that's totally it. But that's what I was trying to get at. That's the ultimate greatest challenge that we have collectively right now is and that is facilitated also by the full use of our innate imagination and creativity, because that's what moves us closer. In whatever way we are each, using our own innate imagination and creativity, whatever way that is moving us closer to our innate unitive consciousness. So part of the process involved in that is that we arrive at a unitive consciousness by independently investigating truth. And through the process of an unfettered search, we do encounter limited, divisive, and exclusive forms of consciousness. But we're here to transcend them, to let go of those, and then adopt a consciousness that brings about unity. So it's that inner quest that we each go on in our own way that can eliminate one of the main causes of conflict in the world today, and that's the inability or unwillingness to distinguish truth from falsehood, right from wrong. It's really the prevalence of disinformation that makes us seek a unitive consciousness.
Mm.
That's one of the only ways that will save us from a make-believe realm of concoction, or whatever we want to call it, that's so prevalent out there now. So we have to. So we have this inherent urge to understand reality. I'm sure that many of you listeners have recognized that innate urge to understand reality and are on their own quest, and maybe a long way along on this, but it's really and so we need to figure out how to expand this kind of consciousness to others, and to make it a fundamental obligation of our humanity, of our sacred nature, to fulfill this capacity and responsibility that is embedded within us. And it's really only our pursuit of truth that leads us to the understanding that truth is one.
Yeah, it's definitely encompasses a spiritual, philosophical practice or approach. And part of what I'm hearing you say, it always goes back to us individually, but there is this next step of thinking collaboratively also. It's now integrating that. And I think even in spiritual communities, there's been such a focus on, even though they say they're in community, it's still really been about the individual, or I have this community or this, but how can I do what I want to do? It's like, it's still been set up. So I definitely am getting by what you're sharing that it's a bit of, there's a mindset shift. There's a shift into this, especially when you talk about the mycelial network, that of this interconnectedness, this unity. It's like, how do I figure that in, whether another individual, a family, a group, locally, globally, how do I start changing that narrative in my mind that it's not just me and mine, I, me, mine, in a way, going from the me to the we construct, right?
Right. Yeah, that's what it is exactly. This expanding our consciousness that we're talking about is exactly that, of moving our own individual consciousness from focusing, centering on me, to centering on the we, to on the collective, and that's just relative to, again, to what's happening in the world right now today. I think we need to recognize that that the evolution, the kind of evolution that we're talking about, really does go at its own pace. I mean, we can't do too much to speed up the process of moving from winter to spring, except for preparing in our own way, knowing that spring will follow winter. So we prepare in our own way for that to happen, while it's all happening on an internal, integral, innate way through the process of evolution itself. And this is an interesting point to maybe bring in what one of the things that Martin Luther King Jr. understood very well. He knew that our vision for change needs to expand well beyond the conflict of the moment, because it'll be a long process for the arc of the moral universe to unfold in its fullness and reflect the living expression of justice as it was designed to be in the beginning of creation, and as it plays out in the universe. So that's about, I mean, having that perspective. It's really a long-term perspective on the process of evolution too, because that um, that vision of it being a long-term process, while at the same time being a process that we're involved in every moment along the way, that understanding offers us an abiding hope for the future. And so that's a perspective, I think, also that emerges from what we might think of as trust in a higher source. It's founded on spiritual values and principles that are timeless, universal, and inclusive, and it's based on a faith in humanity's highest nature to carry out its higher purpose in the world, no matter what gets in its way. And this is again where humanity as a mycelial network comes in. No matter how long the winter is, there will be a spring renewal for humanity, socially and culturally and every other way. So that's a given, understood part of the process, and we know exactly where it's leading to.
Giving us a lot of hope and insights as well. one of the things I just have to share, well, two things. One is I saw Jude Currivan, Dr. Jude Currivan, friend of the show. She's been on multiple times, and I so just love her to pieces and respect her. So I noticed that she'd given you an editorial review. But someone else had said, what I love most is how the author ties together big ideas with simple everyday actions. It gave me hope that unity isn't just an ideal, it's something we actually can build. I think that's so important because I think we have a lot of big ideas. There's a lot of big ideas, but we've got to ground them. We've got to come centered in what are the simple steps, the small steps that we can do with these big chunks of ideas, these new constructs, ideas, global vision, bigger vision, the vision for our life, people leaving jobs or working differently. Now I'm going to be a consultant. I have a dream. I have a big vision, but the small steps, we need the steps that actually help us take those big ideas, and put them into digestible chunks, digestible little pictures from the big picture, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what it's all about. It can't happen any other way. And I appreciate you mentioning Jude. We're good friends and colleagues in the evolutionary leaders, and so we've worked together, and we share that big picture perspective. Of course, she's a cosmologist, and I'm a psychologist, developmental psychologist, but we share that big picture vision, and
Yeah.
For me, the way that makes sense for me is there's another saying. I can't recall exactly where it comes from, but it goes. We have to walk the spiritual path with practical feet, and that's really what it's all about. What you were describing, I think we can have these grand visions, but there also has to be a way that we can bring them into being step by step of the way, and that's where the book comes in. I hope for a lot of people. The book also has. I would quickly mention that the book was written with a study guide. So the end of the book is a very practical study guide for people who want to go into, and groups, especially groups that want to go into more depth and detail into this whole thing. There's a really clear, detailed study guide to go along with the book that I hope groups will use to help identify what they want to make those practical steps to be in their own lives.
That's what I think people need right now. The study guide, that's a great idea. I think in the old paradigm, the place that we were at for so many years, maybe even the last 20 years, is things could stay a little pie in the sky or ephemeral, but now that, we're at a point, crisis point, choice point, where things are actually really changing or have changed. So we need the kind of the tools, the how-to, the action steps, the simple steps to integrate this in our life, I think individually and within our own collectives and communities, for sure. Robert, I have so enjoyed this conversation with you. I feel I'm not kidding. People know me. I've been doing this podcast for a long time. People will say, "Oh, you didn't really like that person," or "You didn't really vibe with what they were saying," or "You loved it." No, what you have shared so much. It not only gives hope, but you seem to have put something in such a succinct way that a person could just grab hold of it and go, okay, I can do this. I can start here, mentally in my mind. I can start here with this action. So I'm sure your book is amazing, because if you like that one person that did the review, saying that you actually put the steps, simple action steps, which is so important right now.
Well, thanks very much, Michele. It's really been great having this conversation with you, and I appreciate your support and your insights into the process as well.
Thank you so much. Now, let people, of course, it'll be in the description, but just for those that are listening now or will listen to the live stream after we end, best, obviously, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, they can get your book. And those of you that are just whipping in, we've been talking to Robert Atkinson, developmental psychologist, author. I'm going to say a bit of a mystic as well. His book, we've been talking about The Way of Unity, a profound, is this the tagline, a profound, that's what I had, a profound roadmap for humanity's next stage?
No, but that's a good one.
It was in your stuff. It was in the write-up.
Yeah, no, that's a good tagline. But the actual subtitle to the book, if that's what you were asking, is
the subtitle.
Essential Principles and Preconditions for Peace. That's the subtitle. But I like the tagline. I mean, the tagline that you were using is great too. I like that very much.
You like that? Okay. Well, I have to tell you, I can't take credit. It's your PR person. I love that. But the main thing, I think, by people listening today, they get a flavor for what you're proposing, but not just the vision of the proposition, but also mindset shifts and application and, actions that can take for flourishing individually and on a planetary and global level. Now, Robert, what about a website? So we all know that I'm going to say The Way of Unity. So people can, that's the book, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. And then if you have a website.
Right. Thanks. Yeah. Yeah. Those are the places you can find the book, and you can find out more about me and my other books on my website, which is robertatkinson.net. And if you want to follow a weekly slice of what I'm talking about here, I do have a series, an ongoing series on Substack, and that's Bob Atkinson. That's under Bob Atkinson on Substack. You can follow me weekly on there too.
Beautiful, perfect. I love Substack. All right, Robert or Bob, however, I enjoyed this conversation. Hope to have another one at some point, and just love what you're doing. Say hi to Jude.
I will. Thanks. Thanks so much, Michele.
Yeah, you take good care. Bye-bye.
You too.
All right, gang, if you're just joining, that was Bob Atkinson, Robert Atkinson, developmental psychologist and author, The Way of Unity. And do check out his book. I think he gave some really great information and insight. And I feel a framework for just a mind shift. And did you see how it fit in so much with Uranus and Gemini and what's happening? Pluto and Aquarius with the community, the transformation there individually and on a community group level, local to global, ties in with that Saturn, Neptune transit in Aries. That's why I like having different people on, because it's like you can see in different sectors how it is all coming together. And he also said, look, because nature does this. I love that about the mycelial network, and I looked it up. The root system. So, and the important point that he said that I really want to underscore here, because it touched upon what I was saying. Nature doesn't look at what's ending or dissolving. It looks at what's optimizing, life enhancing, production. Us as imaginal cells, we had Dr. Bruce Lipton on. I think he was on once or maybe twice on this podcast. You can find the replay. He said we have imaginal cells within us. Those are the cells that have the new information, the upgrade, the update. We are the imaginal selves of the world, of the earth, of the universe. We are the imaginal cells. So we get encoded with something that it decodes, and we have these ideas, the imagination, the new vision. We're to harness that. We have the aha, the epiphany, the new idea. We get the divine downloads. We're meant to put that out there as imaginal selves. In metaphysics and in spiritualism, in the esoteric, it's called reflecting consciousness. We have reflecting consciousness. We're able to reflect back on ourselves, past, present, future, to make choices. And that's why we're able to intervene in life and in destiny and in a co-creative way, right? Make changes, create, whether within ourselves or our groups or systems. So I found what he said very, very powerful. I feel like some of these, again, Uranus and Gemini. Gemini has to do with communication, social media, all media, the way of communicating or getting information out there and joining with others. So to me, what he was saying is part of the mental construct bending, expansion. You know, we're having to distort the energy to create space for the new ideas to come in. There's a distortion going on. But out of this dissonance and distortion comes the new information. So there's a pattern interrupt that's coming in. Very, very powerful. Let me know in the comments, email me, connect with me. Let me know if you take some of this information and if you read the book, his book. Let me know how you like it and use it. I will be here next Wednesday. If you're new, I'm here every Wednesday, 12 p.m. Pacific time. Not alone. We got the Awakenings crew. The Awakening chat, you can also call in, right? That sacred space of empowerment, also known as the chat. I also saw a couple people in there. I'm hoping to find out next week about your artwork if you can call in. I want to see how everyone's doing. I want us all to keep the conversation going, join the conversation, and keep each other inspired. Let's keep lifting each other up, and let's keep this co-creation going, this great awakening on a soul level. We're getting out of the responding and living reactively through conditioned response patterns, through wounding. It is clearly a new era that we are all connecting into and ushering in. Anyway, like, subscribe, share the live stream in the podcast. Let's see, who is that? Is that Bailey? Hi, Bailey. I see you. How's your art doing? How's your art? Look forward to seeing it. All right, gang. Share this so people can join the conversation and keep the conversation going.
I'm getting woke and staying woke. Awakenings broadcasts every Wednesday, 12 p.m. Pacific Time. Archive shows available on iTunes. For continued awakened conversations and insights, join the Awakenings group on Facebook. And check out Michele's blog at soulplayground.com. And keep awake.